The World Without Visas. Around the World with Valery Shanin. Israel. The Shvil Israel Trail. The campaign on the National Trail of Israel became the next stage of the World Without Visas project, in which Valery Shanin travels only around the countries that are visa-free for Russians. Third series. Next drive, the dried up course of a stream in which water only comes in the winter or in the spring. The Eyn Cobi source is a beautiful place to take a little rest, but there is no water here, unfortunately. The power line leads to the tomb of Sheikh Hubani. In Hirbat Hanot, there was once a caravanserai. The travelers going to or back from Jerusalem would stop here. Hotel walls and a fragment of a floor with mosaic have remained of the ancient hotel. The trail passes on the site of the antique Roman road. It is officially called Caesar Road. It was constructed in 133 AD. Since the time the Roman legions went on this road, it has almost not changed, and now goes parallel to the modern highway number 375. The Roman columns are scattered directly on the road. It is necessary to bypass them. The Al Valley, one of the large agricultural areas. Tel Azeka Hill, a historical place. In the Bible, the battle scene played on this place in approximately 1200 BC is described. There was a battle between David and Goliath. We will synchronize our watches with the indication of the sundial established on the hill, and we will be on our way. The city of Beyt-Guvrin, known in antique times as Elevferopol, is located in a very convenient place, the point of intersection of important trade routes. People lived in this place since the Iron Age and up to the era of Crusades, and the city blossomed during the Roman period. At that time, the majority of the buildings which have remained up to now had been built. In 2014, the ruins have entered in the list of World Heritage of UNESCO. The landscape has strongly changed. An overgrown coniferous forest with stony hills was succeeded by green open pastures, crops in the fields, and vineyards.
Thank you very much.
Wash, okay?
Okay. Thanks.
Lachish, nowadays known as Tel Azeka, took base here in the 2nd millennium BC. It is mentioned in the Bible among the cities strengthened by the king of Judah Rehoboam. Fields have already plowed up. Sowing of the winter grains of wheat will begin soon. The trail passes along the border of Palestinian Authority. The neighboring and obviously unfriendly countries divide two rows of barbed wire, but absolutely unexpectedly, a wood occurs in the path, and it is the largest in Israel. The Yatir wood occupies a space of about 40 square kilometers. Up to 1964, there was a blank space here. Then trees gradually began to be planted, and now there are already over 4 million trees. The city of Hirbat Hanot existed during the Byzantine period. From it remains the ruins of 2 basilicas and fragments of walls. The trail goes through the Yatir wood on top of the mountain of Amas. From here, the beautiful view of the valley Arad opens. The road, which is cut down by Romans, passes by a stone quarry towards the Bedouin village of Tarzat, but doesn't pass through it. The trail also passes by the Tel Harad hill. This hill was on the border between zones of dwelling of settled Israelis and nomadic people. Arad is the Russian-speaking city. There are no more foreigners here than in Moscow, meaning those who don't speak Russian. Even the inscriptions on fences are only written in Russian here. From Arad, the Dead Sea and the Jordanian mountains of Edom are visible, but the trail doesn't go there and turns sharply to the south. Nakal Elim leads through the gorge to the ruins of the Roman outpost Zokar Rodrum. There was the border of the Roman Empire. Very long canyon. Going here, you can literally break a leg on these stones. Places are desert. There are no roads per se. Only a trail and some wheel tracks. We sometimes meet transport. A tractor passes from where and where to, no one knows. Bedouins hurrying to their business, a stride will fly. There are no pedestrians on the trail, and there's no housing either. We can see the presence of people somewhere nearby on a long conveyor. On it, minerals are delivered from a pit, Meizad Tamar, one more Roman boundary guard post. Near there passes the highway number 45 connecting Tel Aviv with Eilat. In the desert, we seldomly meet oases, but there are still some. One of them hides in the narrow gorge near the source of Eyn Zafit. There is always at least a little water after the rain. In the Negev Desert, there are 5 craters. The trail passes through 3 of them. The first on the way is the Isre Crater, also known as Maktesh Katan or Small Crater. It got its name because of the fact that its length is 6 kilometers, its width is up to 4 kilometers, and it is half a kilometer deep. None of the Israeli craters are volcanoes, although they look very similar to them externally. They were created as a result of an erosion, under the influence of water and wind. The trail crosses the crater Maktesh Katan on a diagonal. In the beginning it goes down, below sea level. Meizad Zafir, in the 2nd and 3rd centuries of our era, was a boundary post of the Roman Empire. The place has been chosen ideally. From here, the Arawa Valley and the Edom Mountains, which are already on the territory of Jordan, are perfectly visible. The trail leads to the edge of the Nakal Yemen Canyon. An abrupt descent begins. The desert landscape is decorated by acacia trees. They somehow managed to survive without water here. In Israel, for the Jews living outside the Promised Land, there is a program of familiarization to Judaic history and culture offered by the state. We have met Valery Shanin, who has crossed the whole world 3 times and who goes on the Shvil Israel trail. There are special boarding schools financed by the state. School students from around the world come to them for 2-3 months, like an internship. They listen to lectures on the country's history, go hiking. The Eyn Yorkim source. There is always water, and the rocks surrounding from all directions give a shadow. After a short stop, the rise continues. The trail conducts on the crest of the Carbolet mountain. Its name translates as a cock crest, but in appearance it is more similar to the teeth of a huge saw. You will stand over a little gap and get lost in contemplation of the views from above, at the top, and then make your way down. On the Nakal Afran Gorge, the trail goes down to the foundation of Carbolet Mountain. Here, the Zin Plateau begins, on which it is necessary to go for the next couple of days. On the left, the Mador Hill is visible. The hill has an original form and a light beige color. The landscape is mainly flat. Only occasionally small hillocks meet, and the brightest spot, the open-air art gallery. Here, everyone can feel a little bit like an artist. Those who will come afterwards will appreciate and will also add something of their own. Most often, people write something like, Vasya was here, but there are also quite original artistic compositions. The terrain is very flat here, making it possible to pass not only by foot, but also by car. The laziest people can also enjoy that part of the trail. On the Zin Plateau, the trail climbs to the summit of Hod Akiev mountain, then goes down on the other side. This place is called the Negev Desert, but it is often necessary to go on rocks, on narrow tracks, even more dangerous than here. The Eyn Cobi source is a very popular place. The water here is always pure and cool. It is very tempting to bathe here. The pool is deep enough that it is possible to dive into it, even from a big height. There is one more source. It is called the Upper Eyn Cobi, but it doesn't enjoy the same popularity as the lower part of the source. Tourists here are so rare that even the Nubian mountain goats aren't afraid of people. Finally, a true oasis appeared among this desert and barren rocks. Trees, a small part of forest. The Eyn Shaviv oasis, a beautiful place for a halt. But it is forbidden to stop here for the night. Not to scare away local fauna, wolves, foxes, mountain goats, birds and reptiles. We enter on the territory of the Dab Azinim Reserve. The next deep canyon, the descent is very abrupt, and the rise will be even more abrupt. The trail goes through the narrow gorge of Nakal Hava and then leads to the edge of the Ramon Crater. It is the largest erosive crater in the world, with a striking size, 40 kilometers in length, 10 kilometers in width, and a depth of 500 meters. In the settlement of Mitzpe Ramon, they have constructed a huge tourist complex overlooking a crater. Hundreds of millions of years ago, the Negev Desert was at the bottom of the sea. Then, water began to recede gradually, bearing the hilly plain. Approximately 5 million years ago, the Rift Valley Arawa was created. The wind and rain began to wash away the softer rocks and leave the firm ones. So gradually, the crater began to be formed, every day becoming deeper and deeper, unfolding more and more ancient layers. It is now possible to see the rocks that were formed 200 million years ago. The walls of the crater are a visible illustration of the geological history of Earth. The crater was formed due to erosion, but the traces of volcanic activity can also be seen. Tourists are brought here on SUVs and ATVs. They spend the night in the middle of the desert, but in rather civil conditions. At the Beyt Canyon is the ground for the installation of tents, both open air and under attached roof. For those who have no scarves or are insufficiently comfortable in their tent, there are heated tents available. There is also electricity, drinking water, a proper toilet, a hot shower, and a buffet with soft drinks and sandwiches. A real oasis of civilization in the middle of the desert. From the Ramon Crater, the trail climbs uphill Saharonim mountain, then descends down in the gorge, and rise again on the mountain Parsat Nekarot. Its name can be translated as horseshoe. The mountain has a similar shape. Groups of scholars are taken at the Ramon Crater. There, they study terrestrial breeds, master orientation skills, and receive necessary physical activity. Scholars walk lightly. In their small backpacks, they carry only notebooks and bottles of water. The main weight, tents, sleeping bags, dishes, food, and water are transported on jeeps from one side to another. In the Negev Desert, it is not possible to stop anywhere but only in the places which are especially allocated for camping. They are called night camps. They are not only accessible by foot, but also by car. We spend the night at the Gev Holit camp. It is in the gorge Nakal Geled, near the dry falls. The trail continues along the gorge Nakal Nekarot, then begins to rise to the mountain Yakav. It doesn't reach the top, but from here there is a beautiful view of the surroundings. It is already the second half of November, but in the afternoon the sun is still very hot. Therefore, every single acacia tree is an excellent opportunity to take a small break. The trail takes you to the wide Nakal Karkashet Gorge. We are in a huge caldera, or in other words, at the bottom of a volcano. For the people who are not familiar with geology, it is difficult to understand it. No obvious traces of volcanic activity are visible here. The Road of Aromas, or so-called the Road of Spices, has such a great historical value that it is included in the list of monuments of world importance, UNESCO. It is a land part of one of the most ancient trade routes on the earth. It was connecting India, the islands of spices, and East Africa with Mediterranean countries. In the ports of the Arabian and Red Seas, goods were loaded on the backs of camels, and the endless caravans were crossing through the Negev Desert to the coast of the Mediterranean Sea. This way, they carried not only spices such as cinnamon, ginger, and pepper, but also valuable kinds of wood, ivory, gold, silver, jewels, and Chinese silk. The ancient Nabatean city of Moa was one of the largest trading centers on the Road of Spices. Goods and money were flowing like a river. Here was a big caravanserai in which camelers and merchants stopped for the night.
Yeah, I know them by house.
Recently in Israel, there was an idea to also lay a bicycle route, in addition to the pedestrian All Israel Trail, which would go across the entire country, from the north to the south. It is made by volunteers, on pure enthusiasm. In the free time they travel about the desert looking for suitable trails. Then they try to connect them to form one path. They orient themselves with GPS and maps. The trail continues along the wide gorge of Nakal Hashosh. It then passes into the neighboring gorge and brings us to the road leading to the entrance of the Barak Canyon. The Barak Canyon is one of the most popular sites on the Shvil Israel trail. The canyon is narrow with vertical walls. You can't go here after the rain. But even in the dry times of the year, trekking of the canyon requires a lot of physical and mental strength. On the most difficult parts, there are metal brackets built into the rock. In places where you have to climb the next steep waterfalls, the metal ladders were hung. Climbing them is a life risk. One can accidentally slip and fall from a height of dozens of meters onto the rock bottom. Scary. From the Barak Canyon, the trail comes onto the plateau, and then it goes down and through the Vardit Canyon and lowers into the wide gorge Nakal Paran. In the desert, water is worth as much as gold. It is difficult to find and hard to carry. Mutual aid helps. The hikers are helped by drivers. They don't even need to signal them. They stop by themselves. And instead of a greeting, ask, "Do you need water?" In case of need, they can also share some food. The part of the trail going from Zikor to Shizafon goes parallel to the highway number 40. On both sides are military zones. You cannot turn anywhere and the landscape is dull. It is best to pass it by car, by bus, or by hitchhiking, whatever comes. After Shizafon, the trail parts with the highway. The landscape changes. It is still the desert, but slightly different. The stones are replaced by clay and then bright yellow sand like on the beach. The sandy dunes of Kasui is one of the brightest and unusual sights of the Negev Desert. And again, there are only sandy mountains, gorges and passes. The lonely tree of an acacia occurs in the path. We make a short break. There is time to boil tea and to look through the guide, and we hit the road again. The trail brings us to the steep edge of Maili Milkan. The descent down to the valley Harawa begins. Behind the valley, the mountains of Edom are visible in the distance. It is Jordan there. The weather is unstable. After all, I was caught in the rain in the desert. But the wind is quickly clearing the sky. It is possible to continue on our way. This is the official entrance to the territory of the National Park of Timna. Behind this park, the Nakal Alakson Gorge begins, followed by a slow and long rise to the top of the Timna mountain. The park is named after the mountain. From the top of the mountain, the park can be seen almost entirely. In the center of the Timna Park, there is a real oasis, Agamas Nekushtam. The artificial lake with a fountain, a hotel, a restaurant, and a place for camping. It is easy to reach here by the asphalt road. Therefore, the place is very popular. The trail crosses the Timna Park and exits in the Nakal Rakam Gorge. It is already the second half of November, but it is still hot in the afternoon, because it's a desert. Only occasionally, an opportunity to hide from the scorching sun beams under an acacia shadow drops out. The Nakal Rakam Gorge is gradually narrowed and the track enters a narrow canyon. The next rise begins. From the passage, the view of Eilat and a piece of the Red Sea opens. We are almost there. We pass by the Amram columns. It is the name for the cliffs of bright red rocks. Then we turn to the narrower gorge of Nakal Netafim. There is some water in the source, Eyn Netafim. It is not flowing, but dripping from the rock, drop by drop. The trail leads to the highway number 12. From here, it is possible to go straight to Eilat, but we will make a detour. There is an observation deck on the mountain Yekoram. From here, a part of the Red Sea and Eilat mountains can be seen. The neighboring mountain of Shelomo is even higher, and the view from here is even better. Mount Shelomo, the highest peak of the Eilat mountains. It is also the only mountains that we got to climb without the backpacks. The trail goes up and down using the same path. Usually we have to climb the high mountains on one side and go down from the other. Now we only go down. The track goes along the Shelomo Gorge, past the Israeli-Egyptian border. In 48 days, 920 kilometers have been walked from the kibbutz Dan on the far north of Israel to Eilat. The only thing left to do is to plunge into the Red Sea. The campaign of the Shvil Israel Trail is complete, but the World Without Visas project continues. Ahead, new travels across the visa-free countries for Russians.